What's up, Mótóng Nàohǎi? Dave here with a review of Ne Zha 2, the new Chinese blockbuster animated film that is setting myriad box office records. A massive movie this is. Going to talk about the film industry implications of this movie's performance and also review the movie itself. I've talked about Chinese blockbuster films here and there over the last several years. I'm lucky enough to live in a city where there's a large Asian population, so any big Chinese movie that gets some kind of United States release will be playing by me. And I usually try and check out the ones that interest me. Usually these are the bigger movies that often release around now. The Lunar New Year period obviously is a huge film going time in China, and a lot of movies will come here after their success. Ne Zha is based on 16th century Chinese mythology written during the Ming Dynasty, like kind of like a classic Chinese myth storytelling. So these are familiar characters, a lot of them anyway, a lot of the deities in this story. And this is the sequel to the original Ne Zha animated film in 2019, which also was a massive hit at the time, grossing over $700 million, almost all of that, of course, in China. And not to bury the lead, but the sequel has now grossed over $1.7 billion, setting a bunch of records. That's the highest grossing IMAX film in China, over $100 million. That kind of pales in comparison, though, to the big accomplishment here, which is the fact that this is now the highest grossing animated film of all time, passing Inside Out 2, which just set that mark last year. And also, I think most impressive of all, this is the highest grossing film in a single territory, grossing well over $1 billion now in China, and taking that record away from Star Wars The Force Awakens, which previously had that mark in the $900 million range in the United States and Canada. And, sans inflation, the record's a little different, but still, I mean, we're kind of blowing past it. And I think it's interesting, but also not entirely surprising that this has happened. You always see a lot of like kind of ridiculous hand wringing, like, oh, you can't trust the numbers out of China. How do we know? Can we verify these box office receipts? We never seem to say that when like Avatar 2 becomes the third highest grossing movie of all time, in large part due to strong performance in China. But like a Chinese movie dominating in its home country is somehow a surprise. I never really understood that. I think people just have to think about the data when it comes to this. Here in the United States, we have around 40,000 movie screens, and in China, they have like 85,000, more than double the amount. And China is, a rapidly maturing film market that's still a lot newer. And obviously, anyone who's been paying attention knows that the more recent trend over the last few years, kind of coinciding with COVID, is that the Chinese film public is kind of gravitating towards, their own product, their own movies made, for them, by them, movies, in-house films. And not that Hollywood can't find success in China. They still are. It's still happening, but not to the degree that it was in, say, 2015. Again, with few exceptions, like an Avatar 2. It was really only a matter of time before something completely took off in China. And I really buy into it because I'm seeing the residual effect of that here in Boston. This movie got a bigger release than any Chinese movie has gotten since I've been paying attention to this sort of thing, playing at multiple theaters, not just AMC Boston Common, but other locations as well. And it's selling out like every showtime. I saw this movie on a Tuesday, and there were people sitting in the front row. We're already past opening weekend, and yes, it's not getting like a million showtimes a day at every theater, although it was at Boston Common. This movie is really being attended to, and in my theater experience, I was pretty sure I was the only white person there, which is not a new experience for me at these movies. But it was like an all ages thing. There were kids there, there were families there, right? And they seemed really excited and locked in. There was like kind of like a palpable energy to that. Now imagine what that must be like over back in China, where clearly there's just a lot of attention, coming to this movie, and a lot of hype for it. And again, it's the sequel to an already massive movie. And again, I really see no reason to doubt the figures, because like this could have been faked long ago, right? The Battle of Langchenjin 2 did not surpass the first one. The Wandering Earth 2 did not surpass the first one at the box office. Now they decided to lie and make a massive movie. I just don't buy it. And again, you see the genuine attention for the movie here in the United States. So only imagine what it's like in China. So this is crazy. This is a cool story, I think. And it kind of again confirms the trends and things we've been paying attention to. And I imagine we're gonna have another $1 billion Chinese movie before we're all said and done at this point. Why wouldn't we? Anyway, that's enough about the real world implications. The question though is what is the movie like? Ne Zha 2, like is it worth going to see? Do you need to see the original beforehand? What did I think of it? Ne Zha 2 is broadly successful because this is a spectacle first movie. There's some compelling action in this film. The movie's humor is also quite effective. The comedic timing even worked for me as someone who had to read the subtitles to watch the movie. As a completely animated movie, it largely looks good, although I think towards the end when there's a ton of characters on screen, I think the animation falters a little bit. The biggest criticism of the movie is that because there's just so much plot to process, we don't have a lot of time to spend with any of the characters, and there's a lot of characters. Yes, some characters change, although a lot of times that's more physical manifestation versus actual character development. Some of the body humor stuff with Ne Zha and Yao Bing when their souls are together, I think that stuff's really funny, kind of a classic trope. I really enjoyed the various trials. We see a lot of different settings. It's really a grand adventure type story, and I actually found it pretty easy to follow. They do a nice job with the recap in the very beginning of the movie. You don't really have to have any knowledge of the first one going in. I just wish maybe the movie had a little bit more time to breathe in spots so that you could spend a little bit more time with the characters. I won't spoil any of the twists, but there actually were more twists than I expected, and I do think they're pretty effective. A character presented as a villain has more under the hood than you expect. I'll be very curious how the Ne Zha character goes in the sequel, because after being this impetuous, literally demonic child through the first two movies, he finally forms into a fully fledged adult or teenage warrior by the end, as evidenced by the picture behind me. Wonder what that kind of that vibe will be like, because I think Ne Zha's demonic nature is a key aspect of the character, probably the one key thing you can latch onto. I guess at times I had a hard time kind of grappling with the rules of the world, so to speak. Obviously this is mythology. Everyone can fly around. Also everyone can seemingly transform. I just never quite understood the extent of various characters' abilities. Not that it really mattered, again, because there's just so much plot through this movie that we're always watching something happen, something new happen. You don't really have a whole lot of time to really dwell on anything like that. Ultimately, I was kind of surprised that for the most part, this film is pretty open-ended, and almost every character makes it out, scot-free and still on the board. And it's clearly a story that is all about scale, and it can clearly scale up some more. So I guess my biggest thing would be I hope the animation can maybe be punched up just a little bit, because I think of something like The Wandering Earth or The Wandering Earth 2. That's a movie with really good CGI, so I know Chinese filmmakers have that in them, but to me there was some times where the movie visually this looked a bit flat, and I think there's just more that could be done to improve it. Although I really like the dragon design. I think that looked pretty nice. But yeah, Ne Zha 2, I think of the Chinese blockbusters I've seen recently, right? Last year I saw Article 20 and YOLO. Those are obviously live action movies set in reality. This is a big change, and I think it was pretty cool. I can't help but just reflect on the theater experience I had, in a sense that people were hyped, people were laughing, kids were locked the fuck in. I heard a lot of comments from kids around me. Honestly, a bit perplexing that there were so many kids seeing this movie, and that's what we've been hearing, that families are going to see this, because it's quite violent. This is a PG-13 movie for sure, but there were 5-year-olds at my theater nonetheless. Ne Zha 2, what a movie industry story. Certainly didn't expect a Chinese movie to dominate to this degree. nevertheless, here it is. Still not entirely shocked. Let me know, though, if you've seen the movie, what did you like most about it? What stood out to you? What about the performance of the movie has stood out to you? Let me know. And for more movie reviews, subscribe. I'll see you next time.